Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Star Scholars Leadership Series. I am your host, Dr. Mary M.J. McConnor, and I am here with my good friend and mentor, President Emeritus Thomas Haas, aka T. Haas, and he could tell you a little bit more about how he got that cool nickname, but welcome.
It's good to be here, MJ, with you, and looking forward to completing this for your viewership.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. We're really happy to have you here today. And I was hoping that maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your higher ed journey. And did you always want to work in higher education?
Sure, be glad to start with that. And you mentioned T. Haas, so let's do that one first.
Okay.
Back in '06, when I started my first day on the campus of Grand Valley, I went around at 10 o'clock in the morning to visit with the transition students. Those are upper class students that were going to be entrusted with ensuring that the underclass, the new first year students, were going to be oriented to the life and culture of the university. The student Senate president, Mike Foster was his name. He was a junior at the time. He wound up to, after he graduated, went into politics and has had a great career as well. A wonderful young man, a Laker for a lifetime, just like you, MJ. So we're around the Carillon in Allendale on Grand Valley's campus, meeting these students, and I'm introduced to them by Mike, and said, glad to be here. Look forward to working with you and ensuring that you have the great pathway forward to achieve your goal of a degree from Grand Valley. I'll do the best I can on your behalf. So one student, after I asked them if they had any questions of me, and in the audience was also my wife and my daughter and a news reporter from the Grand Rapids Press. So this one woman comes forward who I know now as a teacher in the Grand Rapids. And she says, well, what can we call you, sir? I said, well, President Haas sounds good to me. Dr. Haas, call me Tom in formal settings is wonderful. So she stepped forward in front of the whole group and she said, how about T. Haas, and 200 plus students started chanting. And it was a wonderful welcome. And one of my coaches on the staff a couple of days later, because it appeared in the Grand Rapids Press that students welcome T. Haas to campus. And he says it's a great nickname. Every time you hear it, just think that you're getting a hug from a student. And I do appreciate that. So now, 17 later, in my classes that I'm teaching, I'm still known as T. Haas. And once in a while, even my kids and my wife refer to me as T. Haas as well. So we'll take that affection from the students any day. It was wonderful welcome for me. But my journey started off maybe a little differently than most. I'm a first generation to go to college. In fact, my mom and dad didn't graduate from high school. My dad was World War II veteran in the Navy. He was a cook. And my mom was a daughter of two Polish immigrants surviving through the Depression. It was tough. I came along in the early 50s, and my dad came back from the service. He was a assembler for Singer sewing machines, but was able to get a GED and join the New York police force as an officer. My mom was a great stay-at-home mom, and they both had two strong attributes. One, they were very hard workers, both of them, and two, they believed in the real power of education. Even though they didn't have formal education, they could see that in my transitions into my rest of my life, as well as my brother as well. So we wanted, actually, I wanted to go to the Naval Academy to follow in my dad's footsteps, so to speak, into the Navy, but he didn't have the right political affiliation to get an appointment that way. So my guidance counselor suggested, well, how about you look at the Coast Guard Academy or go through maybe NROTC. So I got into NROTC at Cornell and Villanova, and I was on a wait list for the Coast Guard Academy because you get in there on your own merits. I waited. I decided to really take the opportunity once the appointment was offered to me to go to the Coast Guard Academy. That started off my professional career in the service. I went to the Coast Guard Academy and had a wonderful career. My first duty assignment was in Port Huron, Michigan. Actually, my first duty assignments was on the Coast Guard Cutter Mackinac. And in 1970, I met my wife in the Cherry Festival as a escort during the court in Traverse City. So it was wonderful. And so I've been escorting my wife now for over 50 years. So it's pretty neat to report that. But my Coast Guard career took me to get degrees in chemistry, environmental health sciences from Michigan, University of Michigan, another degree in human resources management, and a PhD in chemistry from University of Connecticut, postdoc work at Yale. And the academic pursuits gave me the wherewithal to complete my education, but also note there too that I'm a lifelong learner. And I do appreciate that as one of the attributes of effective leaders. They have to be adaptable and they have to be lifelong learners. So I retired the first time as a captain in the Coast Guard, went on to, and by the way, at the Coast Guard Academy where I returned, I became, now they call it a provost. So I was the assistant provost, the associate provost, and then the provost themselves at that time. Back in the last century, they were deans at the time, but they were basically the academic officers at the Coast Guard Academy. After I retired, I went to become a VP for academic student affairs at a college in Iowa. Went back to my alma mater as the dean, and then in that case, I was a civilian with rank equivalent to an admiral at that time, and still continuing my pursuits to learn about the academy, Lowercast Academy for that matter. And then I was attracted to a presidency in upstate New York at SUNY Cobleskill, and had a wonderful opportunity there. And then I was recruited to go to Grand Valley State University back in 05 and 06, and I assumed the responsibilities in the summer of 06, and I've been there now for 17 years, 13 as the president. Now I've been back in the classroom, not teaching chemistry, which is my discipline, but teaching in the College of Ed and the Brooks College of Interdisciplinary Studies, leadership studies for adult learners who are what I call superintendent wannabes in the Ed Specialist program, and then in the undergraduate program in 2 courses I'm teaching, one in leadership and social change, and another course of my design, leadership and character. So I continued to stay in the classroom now for 45 years, except for 1 year I did have a sabbatical, and that was 3 years ago when I wrapped up my presidency at Grand Valley. So that's a little bit of the steps along the way, and I appreciate the fact that I had really great opportunity, again, standing tall on the shoulders of my mom and dad.
Yes, yes. And thank you for sharing that. And I was actually going to reference a point you made about your mom and dad. And you said your mom and dad believed in the power of education. And that is incredibly profound. And so I want to ask as a follow-up, because there are a lot of people who question higher education's value, like nowadays, not values, but like the value of higher education, getting a degree. And so what would you say to those folks who are questioning, is a degree still worth it? Is it still worth going to college at this point?
Well, I appreciate that question. Also appreciate those that are offering it as well, because higher education has gone up in costs to the ultimate student and their families as well. But it's really clear to me that there are needs for this nation to have a talented workforce. It's, in my mind, it's almost the equivalent of our defense stature, that it really is an imperative that we have an educated citizen so that he or she can make the proper determinations of who our leaders are going to be, where they're going to serve, where the individual students with a degree are going to provide their talents to the workforce and into their service in their communities as well. So I think that there's a balance. Really, we hear maybe it's an either or between a professional program and or an educational program. And I think it is really both. We need to have the opportunity for our citizens to pursue their dreams in whatever pathway they desire. And in my case, I think it's really clear that public education is critically important. In fact, if you look at our history, going back to the Northwest Ordinances, even there too, back in 1787, that the citizens at that time really believed in education, and so much so that they said, we are going to provide opportunities with investment dollars into public higher education. And they saw the strength as well as my folks did as well. So I think it's critically important that there is a value proposition for not just the resources that one gets because they have a degree, but also the need for them to provide their time and talents on behalf of this nation.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And one thing that came to mind too, as you were talking about that, was this idea of people being prepared to be global citizens, right? Because the world, it's still the same size, but it's become smaller, right? Because of technology. And now we can access certain people and nations and resources that we were never able to access before as well. And so what's your idea around that and being prepared for a global workforce?
Oh, it's critically important now more than ever. Just see what's happening in the world today. There's so much uncertainty because of poor leadership in parts of our globe. I had a chance when I was in the Coast Guard to work in the United Nations. Again, I was a chemist. I was in the hazardous materials area in the Coast Guard that sure that we had the safe shipment of cargoes in and out of U.S. ports. And I had a chance to go to the United Nations and work in the Committee of Experts, group of rapporteurs, with people at that time with the Soviet Union. We had China, we had South Korea, we had Canada, we had folks from the Caribbean islands, Australia, and a number of people, all with chemistry backgrounds and with transportation backgrounds as well. And we were able to come to consensus that we could create the right protocols for the safe shipment of hazardous materials because we had the goal in mind to protect this globe. We needed to make sure that we weren't going to insult it with spills of very toxic materials because we want to protect our world. So I noted at that point in time how important the global perspective is. And then I continue on in my work within the Coast Guard and beyond when I was president in Cobleskill and Grand Valley, that we needed to provide our students the opportunity to learn more about themselves and about their responsibilities within this global environment where they're going to serve and lead as well. So I really appreciated my two institutions that I just mentioned by investing in the students and their opportunities to study abroad and also have those opportunities be part of their educational opportunities.
Absolutely, yes. One thing, because you talk about your military experience quite a bit, and so I am curious to know, do you think you would be where you are today, or do you think you would have transitioned to higher education without, how am I trying to phrase this question? Let me rephrase this. I'm going to start over. Do you think your military experience helped you become a university president? And you did the presidency twice. So do you think that prepared you?
Oh, without a doubt. I think the leadership skills that you are able to experience and develop and hone really to become the person you are. And I always viewed my opportunity with education as an educator, and we want to provide our students become leaders of character.
Mhm.
And I believe that fully. That was our mantra at the Coast Guard Academy, and continues to focus my attention onto our curricular needs at the various institutions that I were able to serve. But do I believe leadership within the military context was invaluable to me? Absolutely. But the stereotype, when I went into the service back during the Vietnam era, military life was not viewed as a very positive construct. It has changed, thankfully so, but it really was viewed stereotypically as a vertical. There was chain of command. You had someone on top, usually a man, uh, and then you then went down the chain of command, and you just said yes sir, yes ma'am, all the way. But I believe that the service life really is more horizontal, where you have everyone as a team looking at the mission ahead, and then creating through their time and talent, so to speak, to really engage with one another to achieve that mission as well. That's what we do in higher education. We do strategic thinking, strategic planning, all focused in on the vision and mission and the values we have and the guiding principles. That's what the service life taught me. And I was able to use those types of skill sets in various components of a presidency. The leadership really requires a strategic thinker. And I think my experiences as a Coast Guardsman has helped along the way. But also at the academy, I had a really great colleague who became an ACE fellow, just like you, MJ. And he suggested that maybe I should pursue that as well. His name was Dr. Sanders, and he was the chief academic officer at the time. And he supported me to go to Western Michigan, where I could kind of try out a little bit these leadership skills. I was divided, really having an experience within the Coast Guard. Dieter Hanneke was the president, excellent mentor. Mentors are so critical in our lives, in our professional lives, and many times we become personal friends as well. Well, I had a chance to become an ACE fellow back in 1992 and 3. And that's now many years ago, decades ago. But the principles I learned through that experiences with my colleagues as AC fellows and Dieter Henneke and others along the way really honed my military experience and leadership into a higher educational model.
Excellent. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. And I'll tell you, I'll just share this. When I used to oversee the study abroad department at a university I worked at, I used to oversee multicultural student services and study abroad and international affairs. I loved hiring individuals who were either student athletes or individuals who were in the military, because there is this certain team spirit that you can't find it anywhere else. I've always been like, okay, if they play a sport, I usually feel like they're going to be a great team player. They're going to be collaborative. There's just certain skills that are there that you all have and bring to the workforce, in my opinion.
Yes, I agreed. And I think there's a certain sense of trying to accomplish a mission, but do it with great integrity along the way.
Right.
I think sports, I played basketball and baseball and at the Coast Guard Academy, and enjoyed my teammates, my classmates at the time. And again, those skill sets were critical. In fact, I had a chance to go back to the Coast Guard Academy and do some teaching and chemistry, but also do some coaching, starting off with baseball, then women's basketball, and then women's softball. And in each case, I was able to use some of the experiences from my leadership perspectives, but also I learned from my players as well, how important you do learn from those that you're serving.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your service. I meant to say that too. One other question. Well, I have two more questions. So the next question I have for you, higher education is changing. It's evolving quite a bit. And some would argue that in comparison to other industries, we're not evolving fast enough, right? Because we are seeing some lower enrollment numbers at a lot of institutions. And we're seeing more people, like we already discussed, question the value of a degree, whether or not they should pursue a degree program and go to a college or university. So what would you say we need to do within the academy in order to address some of the pressing challenges we're currently facing?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There are people who value, who are questioning the value. So we have to double down on the notion of relevance within that space. And the challenges us are we're able to really revisit that sense of are we relevant? And those challenges demographically, the number of 18-year-olds has gone down. We have technology that has really evolved over these last 10 or 15 years to see if we really need all the bricks and mortar that we have out there as well. We have the challenges of lack of resources at the time, and we then really have to look at the tuition constructs, because that's one of the ways to do it, to balance the books, so to speak. So all those are coming into place. So what we have to do as leaders is look ahead and say, okay, what can we do? I think the marketplace has to continue to become diversified, not just rely upon those 18-year-old cohorts, which is going to continue to diminish over these next years ahead. But the adult learner is another group of individuals that we need to help try to support, whether it be through community college opportunities or through traditional four-year universities, private or public for that matter. So I think we really need to look at the marketplace and provide additional curricular opportunities for students to achieve their degrees. And we've been experimenting at Grand Valley, I know, and other institutions as well, with what are called bite-sized pieces at the degree options that we have available to the students. We have to look at also other stakeholders. The business community needs to come into play. The whole notion of development, the alumni base, because they, in many cases, have been very successful in their lifetimes. It's maybe time to pay it forward, so to speak, and we need to look at those resources as well. So I believe that we have to do this now at an accelerated pace and seek those means of addressing the notion of relevance with those that are going to take our graduates into their workplace and into their communities. And these individuals then can help really create the pathway forward for others that are going to follow in their footsteps as well. So the challenges are there, but I do believe, and I'm very optimistic because I've been engaging with students for these many years, especially current students that I have in my classmates. They're really talented, but they all are under stress. Many of them are really having some mental stress issues. We see that in the literature time and again. Your world, MJ, you've seen it, and I have as well. So we have to understand that the students themselves has changed. The technology has also made that stress in their lives more evident, but also technology can maybe provide a pathway to offer our curricular opportunities for students. I'm teaching online, for instance, right now at the graduate level, because I expand the base. I can go across the state of Michigan and other states around us, because the students can come into my classroom, so to speak. Physically, it's in my home, but it doesn't discount the need to still have the bricks and sticks, especially for the undergraduate students who are still transitioning their lives from an 18-year-old into a 22-year-old. And those opportunities in terms of a traditional campus are also important. So the some of the comments here, MJ, is we have to continue to balance, but we have to make those adaptations. And leaders in higher education need to understand that they need to look forward with the ability to continue to learn, but adapt accordingly. The other part that we didn't hit upon, but the COVID pandemic really provided a lot of stressors, but it also provided opportunity because we had to ramp up quickly for how we can deliver programming as well. So all that being said, the academy, lowercase academy, needs to continue to evolve and serve students where they are.
Serve students where they are. Absolutely. And I actually had another interview with Dr. Wade from, a former colleague, and he talked about the importance of being student-centered. And so I guess for the final question, because we have quite a few people who want to enter higher education and want to enter the space because of the great reshuffle, great resignation, whatever you choose to call it. But there are a lot of people considering a lot of different career paths. So what would you say for individuals who are thinking about entering the higher education sector for the first time?
Well, I think if you're entering the higher education sector as an educator, I don't think there's any greater calling, a noble calling, to be an educator first and foremost, whether it be K through 12 or into higher education. When you're in higher ed, most of the time we're coming on board as a faculty member. And some of those faculty members find their passion by staying in the classroom and engaging students in their pathway to a degree within the discipline that the faculty member has. Other members of the faculty might say, well, maybe I could lend my expertise and passion into administrative roles. It's not for everyone. But for those that might want to try it out, there's opportunities. You just can't step into a presidency, for instance. Right. You need to seek out maybe within shared governance, looking at community structures where you can serve, whether it be curricular design or compensation, all those areas that are important to the academy. And then I think there's other means you can get right into the governance structure. You can start. I started off with being a section chief in chemistry, and then wound my way up through the dean's office into VPs and presidencies. But I do think that there's opportunity then to grow as oneself and try it out along the way. I do believe that another great opportunity, I think, to learn about the academy is through accreditation efforts. And there you can understand the academy as a whole as well. And then I mentioned during our conversation, I really appreciate the strategic planning leading to accreditation, because we need to know where we're going. As Stephen Covey would say, we got to have the end in mind. And I do believe that through a strategic thinking and planning of the academy, leading maybe the service into accreditation gives you an excellent opportunity to know more about your institution when you do serve in those places, as well as serving to the entire higher educational space as well. So there's different pathways one can take. We need great faculty members, and we need great administrative folks, all focusing in. And you started the conversation with this question about student-centered. I couldn't agree with you more. We need to understand that our roles and responsibilities as educators, whatever role we have, is because the students have chosen us. They have chosen our institutions, and in a way chosen us to help them develop their own personal skills of who they are as individuals, and also within this discipline that they're going to serve and take them into the profession and into their communities.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you as always. And I always find our conversations to be really insightful, and I learned so much from you. And I've been learning from you since 2006, since I was a student at Grand Valley. Go Lakers. Shameless Lakers. But
Well, MJ, you are going to have a continued great career as well. I followed it through the years that we've known each other, and you're just getting started.
thank you. I appreciate that. And this has been a lot of fun too, especially for people who want to learn more about different leadership positions in higher education and how to get there. So after I finished my fellowship with the American Council on Education, I said, you know what? Maybe I can create a series for folks who want to learn more. And so that's how I got in this area. And I've learned so much from every person I've interviewed so far. So yeah.
Well, thank you for providing the space to those that are here listening. I wish you well in the pursuits of your degree as you go forward. And MJ, thank you for the opportunity of sharing some thoughts and perspectives with them, and continued with your friendship. Thank you.
Thank you.